have a requirement to understand what is in the Company Law, the Companies Act, in order to do my job properly. If the Companies Act governs how companies in South Africa should be run, the laws and regulations that they have to comply with, I need to know what those laws and regulations are in order for me to audit the company properly. If our client, if our company that we are auditing is contravening the company law in any way, we can definitely see that that would be information that the users of the financial statements would be interested in. If I said to you, would you like to invest in this company? And you said the financials look fantastic, the numbers look great, the profits look great, that's wonderful. And I said to you, oh, by the way, the directors have contravened the company law in some way. They have created some kind of statutory contravention and they are not following company law. Is that information that you as a user would feel may influence your decision over whether or not to invest in that company? The answer is definitely yes. In terms of company law, it is a legal statutory requirement that companies follow that, which means any contravention of that is going to create some kind of illegal activity. It's not a good thing, and the users are definitely going to be interested in that. So for us to express an opinion about the fair presentation of the financial statements, it's very important for us to know what the company law of any client requires. If my client has the responsibility to comply with any other kind of laws and regulations, as an auditor, I need to know that as well. It definitely could impact the financial statements, potentially in terms of fines, penalties that need to be paid over, and especially if the directors are committing some kind of fraud, or they are creating, or they're involved in some kind of illegal activity or contravening certain laws that their company has to follow. As an auditor, I need to be aware of that. So a lot of students don't realize the very high importance that is placed on us as auditors to know the different laws and regulations that my client is required to follow. It's not limited to the Companies Act, but as a general requirement in our auditing studies, we will be focusing on company law. Part of that as well is that if the company law says anything about us as auditors, we need to be aware of it. In the Companies Act, there are quite a few requirements that relate to the company's auditors. So the Companies Act states that the company's auditors must be such and such a people, how they are appointed, etc. And obviously, as an auditor, if we are going to be auditing that company, we need to know what the company law says about us and our requirements. So we study, in auditing, we study the company law to make sure that we know what our responsibilities are in terms of that particular law, as well as the fact that our client needs to be complying with those laws as well. So let's take a look at what we need to be aware of. The company law, as far as our auditing requirements are concerned, talks about who should be appointing the auditor. In that company, whose job is it statutorily to be appointing the auditor? The requirements for us to be appointed as auditors. Can anybody be appointed as an auditor? Are there certain levels of criteria? The reappointment, is this something that needs to be redone every single year? The resignation, if I as an auditor decide that I no longer want to be auditing your company, what do I need to do? What if an auditor has resigned, or an auditor has left a company, decides I no longer want an auditor? What about that vacancy? There is a vacancy left. How do we deal with that, or how a company is supposed to deal with that? Rotation is about changing the audit partner. We'll get into the details there. And what about the rights of the auditor themselves? So we're going to look at these items and topics in a little bit more detail, and you need to be aware of the requirements within company law for these particular items and the details behind them.